Hello, everybody. This is Ver2, and today we will be looking at wrongly self-actualizing and why you ought to avoid it. So, first of all, we have to actually define what the term self-actualization means, and this goes back to a term in psychology coined by Maslow and his hierarchy of needs that he created. So, in this hierarchy of needs, you can see that physiological needs are at the bottom and self-actualization is placed at the top. What this means is that the needs at the bottom are more important to us and more important to our survival. But the needs at the top are also important for kind of separating ourselves from each other. And to self-actualize, in simple terms, means to achieve one's full potential. This can be bifurcated into self-improvement and growth, which is often used on the this term is often used on the internet to mean that. So, what do I mean by wrongly self-actualizing and how can we do it? So, let me give you a scenario. Let's pretend that we have a person who is licentious, and licentious means to desire sexual needs and such. So, he makes a decision, or she, to set a goal, and they don't actually know what type of goal to set. So they just decide, you know what, I'm going to be better. And because they give this vague and general statement of just being better, they forget one of the most important concepts or steps of a goal, which is the purpose. And their purpose was to control desires, but since this person presumably set a goal just to be better, their goal can be done in a variety of ways. So it's very important for us to set a purpose for a goal and how we undergo a goal. And I also think it's important to understand that the reason we do things and accomplish goals is as important, if not more important, than the goal itself. And I will give some examples right now. For instance, let's give another example of someone who makes a goal of making tons of money. And I have a little timeline here. So by year two, they have expanded their connections. By year five, they have a successful business. And by year seven, they engage in philanthropy because they already have a great sum of money. And because their goal is just to make tons of money, they don't really know where to stop. And by year eight, they're already happy. Now, I'm sure you can realize that this is a virtuous individual, someone who is, in good faith. But my point is, if we look here at the happy, by year eight, they are already happy and they have set their time limit for the goal to be 10 years. If they looked at or if they deliberated more about the purpose for their goal and their motive, they would realize that by year eight, they were already happy. And thus, there was no reason to exceedingly, for the next 2 years, make more money is the because they were already happy, and presumably the reason they made a goal of making tons of money was to be happier. So it's important to take a look at this process and what you actually do in pursuit of the goal. And another similar example, this person also wants to make tons of money. Difference is, by year one, they engage in criminal activity. Year three, they sell goods on the black market. And year five, they already have a successful organization. By year seven, they are unfulfilled, and we can see that this is a vicious individual. But the same point applies here. If they just looked at the reason or the motives why they undergo this goal, then they would see that at year seven they were unfulfilled and that they should maybe change their goal and stop, trying to make tons of money, especially doing it in this way. But they didn't because they didn't look at their pursuit of the goal and the things that the events or the multitude of events that actually occurred while in pursuit of the goal, which I believe is very important. I would like to address some arguments against, wrongly self-actualizing. And the first one is the it shouldn't matter how you got there as long as you finish strong argument. And this may be analogous to the tortoise and the hare, which you may have heard the story. The tortoise starts slow and, well, is slow during the whole race, while the hare starts fast, but the hare, starting too fast, loses its energy, and by the end, the tortoise finishes first. And the other argument is that we can't expect ourselves to be virtuous from the get-go argument. So now, the first argument, it shouldn't matter how you got there as long as you finish strong. I'd like to give you another scenario. Let's assume we have three virtuous individuals. And yes, these are portraits of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Socrates, now this is hypothetical, so he was probably virtuous longer than this, but these are just random hypothetical situations. So let's say he was virtuous for 3 years, and Plato was virtuous for 4 years. Finally, Aristotle for 7. Now, wouldn't you say that just by looking at this, you want to be virtuous the longest? Let's say they all made a similar goal of 10 years, and during this time in the pursuit of the goal, Aristotle has been virtuous the longest. And I think it's pretty fair to say that this is the best person and this is going to be the most happiest person in this situation because he's been virtuous the longest during his pursuit of the goal. And I think this is why, we should really take into account the why we are pursuing the goal, the motives, and, the purpose. So the argument of it shouldn't matter how you got there as long as you finish strong doesn't really, have any merit because sure, let's say these individuals are all started at the same place, but isn't it the person who got there the quickest, going to be the most happiest? If he's virtuous from the get-go, then he's maybe happiest quickest. So that's my argument there. And then the other counter argument is that we can't expect ourselves to be virtuous from the get-go. Now, I understand that from this diagram you're able to see that the majority of people in our world make goals like this, and that's why it's prevalent. We can't expect ourselves to be, this way right from the get-go, and that's why we make goals. But I would like to shift your attention to my example here of this person. Imagine, this person was Usain Bolt. Obviously, he probably started working harder earlier than anybody else, and thus he became this professional athlete. So the argument that we can't really expect ourselves to be virtuous is, valid, but shouldn't we try to be virtuous as soon as possible? Because if we are, then we have more time to, you know, be a better person and take our goals. And by virtuous, I don't necessarily mean like being fulfilled and having complete fulfilled life, being, uh, you know, fulfilling one's goal. What I mean is, being in good faith. And if you're in faith sooner, it's I think it's obviously better to be this way. So this argument, I believe I have given a strong counter argument against. So finally, I now have to answer my claim at the start is why you should avoid wrongly self-actualizing. And I think it's pretty obvious from the reasons that I've stated. First, engaging in actualization towards a vicious goal does more harm than good. And without deliberating or contemplating at first why you're going to undertake this goal, you can quickly reach a vicious goal and a vicious attitude towards your goal and just in the pursuit of the goal. So it's very important that at the start, when you're contemplating, you make sure that the reason you're doing this goal is with virtue and with for happiness instead of other external reasons. And the second reason why maybe you want to avoid wrongly self-actualizing is the motive to self-actualize and the process you undergo to complete the goal have dire consequences. And this is similar. The process is more important than the end goal. The multitude of events that you experience during your pursuit of the goal is going to have a more profound impact on who you become than the end goal. This was Vertu, and I thank you for watching this episode. And I would just like to say that a new episode is also coming called When Should We Start Self-Actualizing Towards a Goal and How Should This Be Done? If you had any questions or comments on this episode, maybe counter arguments against my claim, or how I could strengthen my argument, then please leave that in the comment section below. And thank you.